The meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Baez. Director Baez. Director Herndon.
Present.
Director Miller. Your mic is muted. Director Miller.
Present.
Yes. Okay. Director O'Halloran.
Present.
Director Phillips.
Present.
Director Simpson.
Present.
Director Taylor.
Present.
Director Woodward.
Here.
Director Baez. Chair. Yes. Chair Peterson.
Present.
We understand that Director Baez was on the call and the call has dropped. So at this point, we can verify that he is present for the meeting. So I will mark him present if that is okay with the chair.
Yes.
And technology is working with trying to get him logged back on. So we would have 9 present for this meeting.
Thank you. At this time, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for Spanish-speaking members of our listening audience.
Buenas tardes. Para las personas que desean escuchar la Junta Escolar, por favor de llamar al 312-626-6799 y marcar la clave 974-9843-1887. Una vez más, ese teléfono a llamar es 312-626-6799 y marque la clave 974-9843-1887. Buen día. Gracias.
Gracias. At this time, I ask board members to please put your device on mute and remain muted unless you are speaking. This will help reduce the digital interference and will help our board clerk, our court reporter, and the listening audience keep track of who is speaking. Members, if you wish to speak, please put up your hand or type your request using the chat feature. If I'm unclear on the speaking order, I will ask the secretary to read the speaking queue based on the order indicated by the virtual platform that we're using. With that, as stated in the public notice of this meeting, in order to comply with the Safer at Home order issued by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, I move that we waive paragraphs 3A and 5D and any other portions of the Board Rule 1.06, which may restrict or prevent the board from convening a remote or virtual meeting under the present emergency requirements in order to allow members of the board to participate remotely without a quorum of the board being physically present at the Central Services Building. Is there any discussion on that matter? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Chair Peterson's motion to waive all applicable portions of Board Rule 1.06 in order to conduct this meeting virtually and without a quorum of the board being physically present. And it looks like Director Baez has joined us. Director Baez.
I have been dumped a number of times. I hope that there's no problem with the technology.
Thank you.
But I'm an aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Miller.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Taylor.
Aye.
Director Woodward.
Aye.
Chair Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Before we move on, I would like to state for the record that due to the contingencies of the COVID-19 pandemic and in recognition of Governor Evers' safer at home order, we have been holding our meetings virtually. Board members are participating remotely, and we have limited the number of administrators staffing this meeting, and we're not allowing members of the public to be physically present in the Central Services building. However, in order to allow as much public participation as possible, in addition to our normal practice of broadcasting our meetings on radio station WYMS 88.9 FM and live streaming them on the MPS website, we are broadcasting this meeting on MPS YouTube stream, the link to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. I want to thank the public for its understanding and for its willingness to continue to participate in the governance of its schools under these trying circumstances. The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I remind members to please keep your devices muted to avoid interference.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, what is the first item on tonight's agenda?
Item 1 is an informational overview and budget hearing on the 2020-21 Superintendent's proposed budget. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Does the administration wish to make comments?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Peterson and members of the Strategic Planning and Budget Committee. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. We are pleased to present the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget for your consideration. At the heart of the proposed budget is our financial and moral obligation to allocate resources to ensure rigorous and equitable learning experiences and opportunities for all students. The proposed budget was developed with much care and thought with respect to students, staff, and community we serve. The budget, as outlined, was developed based on current law. While difficult decisions have been made to balance the budget, we are grateful to the community for approving the referendum to restore funds needed to strengthen high-quality education experiences for children in Milwaukee Public Schools. At this time, Martha Kreisman, Chief Financial Officer, will begin guiding us through the PowerPoint presentation's overview. Martha?
Greetings, Chair Peterson, members of the committee. My name is Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The topics to be discussed tonight include a review of the budget purpose, priorities, and budget process, along with a financial outlook and presentation on the different funds included in the budget. We will look at comparative school and central services information. It will be important to consider long-range opportunities, especially during this time of pandemic and uncertainty concerning future budgets. Chris Thiel will be joining us later to talk more about that. The choices we make in this budget will have impacts into the future. Before we go further into the 2020-21 proposed budget, it is important to first celebrate and recognize the accomplishments we have experienced this current school year. Dr. Posley will provide us with MPS highlights of the current year that will help us frame our discussion going into the next year.
Thank you, Martha. Our district is currently made up of 159 schools of all educational programs, including but not limited to strong college preparatory, bilingual education, career and technical education, Montessori, language immersion, and gifted and talented. The Milwaukee Public Schools currently serve over 75 students. Of those students, 20% have identified special education needs. Over 12% are English language learners, and about 83% live in the economically disadvantaged situation. Student achievement is increased based on the state's report card. Scholarship funds received by students is growing. The class of 2019 received over 78 million in scholarships. By reflecting on the progress that we are making within limited budget in the 2019-20 school year, we can identify strategies to maintain or enhance during the budget process. And when we look at the highlights, we look at the goals. The board remains committed to the district remain committed to the Milwaukee Board of School Directors goals, focused on academic achievement, student and family and community engagement, and effective and efficient operations. Next is the 5 priorities for success. To achieve the board's ambitious goals, the 5 priorities for success serves as a strategy to increase academic achievement and accountability, improve district and school culture, develop our staff, ensure fiscal responsibility and transparency, and strengthen communication and collaboration. Prioritizing fiscal resources in schools and focusing on the 5 priorities reflects the district's underwhelming commitment to maximizing the learning of all students. Academic achievement. Under our academic achievement goal, we have many rigorous initiatives that were developed, implemented, and supported. The ambitious instruction plan 2.0, as well as aligned professional development, was implemented to focus on mastery of core instructions in the area of reading, writing, and mathematics. The regional support systems are in place to support the needs of schools. The process include redevelopment efforts that included community and stakeholder engagement, consideration of educational trends, and space evaluation. Through the 53206 initiative, Andrew Douglas opened this year in their state-of-the-art middle school to serve as a feeder pattern to the surrounding K-5 schools. The re-envisioning of North Division will serve as a flagship high school for students in the area. The 53206 initiative involved a cohort of schools that were provided additional support, such as additional substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, and trauma support specialists, to provide support resources to impact student achievement outcomes in Milwaukee, most deserving zip code. The district continues to engage community partners around early childhood to leverage our resources to increase readiness and early literacy skills and for our youngest learners. We increased the Head Start seats, provided more early learning opportunities for Milwaukee's families. The MPS Montessori Strategic Plan continues to be implemented to enhance offerings for students. A task force will convene concerning enhancements and continued community engagement in the areas of bilingual and world languages. The district continues to offer virtual learning to provide additional educational opportunities for students and families seeking unique programming. Online learning has been expanded district-wide during this pandemic closure, creating a model for the future. The district opened Green Tree Preparatory and Instrumentality Charter School. MPS received approval for 4 additional schools, Alba, Marvin Pratt, Stewart, and Morris Middle School, to pursue the IB authorization. 7 schools have reached the top tier of the state schools report card and are rated as significantly exceeds expectations. 74 schools rates of meeting, exceed, or significantly exceeds expectations. In addition, 41 schools improved at least 1 category level on the state report card. The district opened the Success Center to provide therapeutic services where behavior interventions have been unsuccessful. The Success Center uses a restorative approach that restores relationships between the student, school, and family. We continue to implement the community schools model to engage families and parents at 12 of our schools. Thanks to the gift of Rockwell Automation, installed a new computer room and STEM center at Cass Street School to help students sharpen their science, technology, engineering, and math skills. In addition, through the GE Foundation grant, 6 digital fabrication labs are being constructed. Professional trained staff will assist, enabling us to for the lab into the school education program to engage students in meaningful, transferable learning experiences. School leaders participated in restorative practices, professional development as a part of the first district-wide rollout of restorative practices. The 4-year graduation rate in Milwaukee Public School rose from 69.1% for the class of 2019 and 2.4% over the 2018 graduation rate of 66.7%, and a 10.9% increase over the 2015 graduation rate of 58.2%. And when we look at student and family and community engagement, the following will provide examples of engaging students, family, and community through the year. The district facilitated a youth summit during the school year, as well as a language summit during the fall. We have engaged students through the year by conducting student focus groups, the student advisor group, and weekly school visits. In order to increase access to young people across the city, Milwaukee Public Schools is renovating and updating playfields, including Columbia, Custer, Franklin Square, Clovenuk, and Southgate playfields. The Pulaski and Vinson stadiums have been updated. Resources were created to support family involvement, including parent guides in reading, writing, and mathematics, a parent guide to assessment, and an MPS monthly reading list. Milwaukee Public Schools has launched a new district app accessible for Android and Apple smartphone platforms, so families can receive instant updates and access important information about their child's school and progress. A community survey and public listening sessions were conducted to gather input about important education topics from students, families, educators, family, and community members to determine how Milwaukee Public Schools can strengthen and enrich students' academic experience and opportunities. We are also celebrating the grand opening of the Andrew Douglas Twilight Center. The Andrew Douglas Twilight Center is the 8th Twilight Center to open and is the first such site to accommodate middle school students. And then we look at effective and efficient operations. In order to develop our staff, we are increasing professional development offerings through MPSU, including pathways to teaching. A district-wide plan to recruit, onboard, and retain highly qualified staff with an emphasis on teachers of color was developed. Recruitment and retention efforts, including 4 job fairs, implementing salary schedules, a 3-year plan to enhance human resources operations was developed. Through board action, Milwaukee Public Schools joined the city and county in identifying resource leveraging opportunities through the One Milwaukee Initiative and Task Force. The Milwaukee Public Schools Department of School Nutrition Services focused on increasing healthy food opportunities for students throughout a partnership with the Lifetime Foundation. School funding has been stabilized to retain staff for consistency and improving of the educational programming. Public hearings and budgets. I'd like to acknowledge the district and the school teams that contributed to the accomplishment of these efforts, although that was a short list of many, many initiatives and projects that we are launched and implemented in the 2019-20 school year. We look forward to continuing with the same commitment in the 2021 school year under the proposed budget before you today. With that, Martha Kreisman will share intended purposes. Martha.
Martha Kreisman, Chief Financial Officer, Chair Peterson, and members of the board. The intended purpose of the budget is to present the district's financial plan for the fiscal year. The budget then serves as a communication document for the citizens of Milwaukee who wish to understand how the school district operates, and the methods used to finance those operations. The annual budget process ensures sufficient financial resources are available for educational programs, affords opportunities for collaboration and public input, and provides the basis for fiscal management and accountability to the taxpayers and community stakeholders. The budget also serves to provide highlights of the district's financial policies and determine how the additional referendum revenue will be utilized. Holding a public hearing on the budget is a compliance measure with Wisconsin State Statute Chapter 119, but it is also a duty to the taxpayers in the city. The meetings give the administration an opportunity to provide pertinent background information on factors that influence the budget preparation, as well as factors moving forward that are likely to impact future budgets. While the budget is balanced, it is important to obtain public input on important policy matters. The board meetings held throughout the month of May provide an opportunity for the district to be transparent concerning the proposed budget and priorities for the coming year. The meetings also provide an opportunity for the public to be heard, so as an organization we can improve performance, adjust service levels in the context of limited resources, differentiate expectations based on various needs, and understand public priorities in planning, budgeting, and managing services. These meetings provide an opportunity for review and discussion that will finally lead to an approved budget. As you will learn through this presentation, much thoughtful input along with realistic estimates have gone into the budget development so that resources could be prudently allocated to ensure rigorous and equitable learning experiences for all students. Dr. Posley will highlight the fiscal year 2021 budget priorities.
I'm proud to say each year as superintendent, I've made it a budget priority to maintain and increase funding to support students and schools. The graphic illustrates how our funds are spent. For every dollar budgeted, 91 cents is used to educate students. This reflects a 3-year percentage point increase since the 2018-2019 school year. And looking at the budget priorities, the budget reflects a commitment to staff as evidenced by increased average salaries and maintaining benefits. Stabilized school budgets support students and staff and demonstrates a commitment to schools by maintaining staff. Preserving schools' budgets stabilize the school structure around students. Overall, budget priorities include stabilizing school budgets and increasing school-based staff, supporting regional development efforts, increasing school improvement, increasing the construction funds, and continuing playfield renovations across the city. Martha?
In January, the board adopted the following parameters used in the planning and development of the fiscal year 21 budget. They are: ensure that there are sufficient resources for high-quality classroom instruction at the Tier 1 level, adjust and repurpose educational programming and departmental budgets to prioritize student achievement, fully implement the salary phase-in schedules with a possible cost of living increase, consider employee benefit modifications for eligible employees to identify cost savings and increase in efficiencies, explore operating efficiencies, including those related to transportation, implement a multi-tiered mental health approach to promote students' mental health and social emotional learning, strengthen a well-rounded educational experience by increasing the allocation in areas of school, library, art, music, and physical education, restore revenue to the construction fund to address deferred maintenance, and prepare the budget maximizing the revenue limit. Maximizing revenue limits is important as it affects the current year and is used in the calculation of the following year's revenue limit. Slide 20. Please keep other parameters in mind as we go through the presentation. You will hear about adjustments and repurposing of educational programming and departmental budgets, salary increases, operating efficiencies, and an equitable education system. The budget development is a year-long process. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. These slides provide information on the board-approved timetable for the budget development. The purpose of including it here is to show that the budget development was purposeful, deliberate, collaborative, and thorough. Slide 21 shows key activities starting in December, including a strategic planning and budget committee meeting, and slide 22 shows the timetable continuing through the transmittal of the budget to the Milwaukee Common Council of an adopted budget in June.
Efforts to engage key stakeholders are important to schools, the district, and the Milwaukee Board of School Directors. The school engages staff and families as a part of the budget process and completes that process with a signing off by the School Engagement Council. At the district level, there are many opportunities for input that inform strategies. This input is taken seriously as the district plans for the need of students and families. There have been several board committee meetings that have allowed for public testimony, to discuss potential saving strategies, budget parameters, to review the 5-year financial forecast, and to review the approved policy changes.
At the school level, ambitious instruction budget conversations were held with schools that have been identified for additional support. The purpose of the conversations is to make informed decisions on using resources that are focused on providing the best education for students. About 60 schools participated. Each school received a letter summarizing the conversation and providing recommendations for additional support. After school budgets are submitted, regional resolution teams provide a collaborative approach to reviewing school budgets and ensuring appropriate staffing levels. The regional resolution teams include staff from the offices of school administration, human resources, academics, finance, and the school leader as needed. Each school budget was carefully reviewed, discussed, and adjusted if needed in collaboration with the school leader. For identified high-need schools, a list was created and prioritized to provide additional staffing. All of these conversations provide insight for the superintendent to stay current concerning the needs of the schools and the district as a whole. School Operations Fund is the main fund used to run the district and the schools. The fund provides the school allocations and central services allocations. The major revenue categories for School Operation Fund are property tax levy and state aids, including state equalization aid and integration aid. Other state aids, federal aids, and local non-property tax revenues. Just over 84% of the funds come from the property tax levy and state aids, which are capped by the revenue limit. The seesaw in the picture represents the revenue limit. As the name implies, the school district revenue through state aid and property tax is limited. There's a maximum amount allowed. That maximum amount is a balance between state aid and tax levy. As a district receives more state aid, in turn it will receive less tax levy. Most of the revenue limit is made up of state aid. This is usually good news. However, during the pandemic, state aid could be affected due to slow revenue streams from income, corporate, and sales tax. The revenue limit formula has not been modified in school districts for the last 25 years. Some of the impact to Milwaukee Public Schools has been a relatively flat maximum revenue per pupil since 2010-11 school year. Recently, through state legislature, the governor increased our revenue, our per pupil revenue. So in last year, 10,297 was the this current year, 10,297 was the maximum revenue per member, compared to 10,122 from fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 19. And the maximum revenue per member in fiscal year 21 will go up again to 10,476.
Director Peterson, members of the committee, I am Lynn Rule, Director of Financial Planning and Budget Services, and will be reviewing projected enrollment and the funds within our budget. MPS, okay, thank you. MPS has 158 schools and is projected to have an enrollment of 74,966 students in FY21, which is relatively flat compared to the current year. The number of school-aged children in Milwaukee has decreased 4.9% between 2014 and 2018. This adds to the long-standing competitive nature of the Milwaukee educational environment. Projected revenues for 2021 school year is $1.2 billion, an increase of $2.8 million compared with the current year. This is due mainly to slight increases in revenue limit and special education aid. The district is made up of three major funds: fiduciary funds, which include OPEB, pension, private purpose, and long-term capital improvement trusts; statutory funds, which include school operations, extension, and construction funds; and non-statutory funds, which includes categorical or grant funds. As we compare the 2019-2020 amended adopted budget to the current 21 proposed budget, you can see that the operations fund decreased by $0.7 million. The nutrition fund increased by $0.3 million. The construction fund increased by $4 million. The extension fund remained constant, and the categorical fund decreased by $0.8 million. The overall revenue increased by $2.8 million, which is a 0.2% increase. The next graph depicts the revenues that make up the school operations fund and reflects that most of the funding is from property tax levy, equalization, and integration aids, which total approximately $797.1 million. Local revenues are $17.5 million. Federal state aids are $16.4 million. Other state aids are $68.3 million, and state handicapped aids are $48 million. Please note that although the state handicapped aids are supposed to be reimbursed at a 30% rate in fiscal year 21, it is thought the state reimbursement rate will fall far short of that percentage. The expenditures by object graph shows that the majority of the operations budget is for salaries, benefits, and purchase services. A significant amount of purchase services are used for contracted schools, programs, and transportation, which provide services directly to students and enhance enrollment. Most of the nutrition fund revenue is based on the amount of meals and snacks served to our students. The main revenue source is the federal school meal program aids. The projected revenues for school nutrition are basically flat. Most of the nutrition fund expenditures are split between two major areas: salaries and benefits and food or supplies. The food or supplies makes up just over half of the costs, and salaries and benefits comprise most of the rest of the projected expenditures. The extension fund funds MPS recreation. Most of the extension fund revenue is from property tax levies. A small percentage is from local revenues and applied surplus. The next slide shows the majority of the expenditures in the extension fund are related to the salaries and wages of the staff that coordinate and facilitate programs for the entire Milwaukee community. There is also a large percentage in purchased services, which includes wraparound programs and the construction of new playfields. The majority of the extension fund expenditures go toward our many community services for all residents of Milwaukee. The categorical fund is made up of federal, state, and private grants. This slide shows a summary of district revenues by source from fiscal year 18 through the proposed fiscal year 21. Compared to the fall adopted budget, categorical funds have decreased by $0.8 million. Federal grants are increasing slightly, but the increase is offset by the projected reduction in private grants. Overall, central service positions have decreased by 4% or 42 FTEs, or full-time equivalent. And school positions have increased by 25 positions, or 0.3%. School positions make up 90% of the total 9,650 positions budgeted in fiscal year 21. The next graph shows the allocation of the school operations fund. Please note that the school accounts have increased by $16.7 million, even though overall total school operations fund have been reduced by $0.7 million. This demonstrates MPS's commitment to our schools. In comparing Milwaukee Public Schools administrative costs to the state average and other districts, we have found that total administrative and other costs per DPI reporting are lower as a percentage of total budget in MPS at 19.1%, as opposed to the state average of 20.7%. Next table represents the 5-year school operations forecast. The forecast shows that revenues will decrease $20 million in fiscal year 24. This is due largely to the phasing out of the state integration aid. This would leave MPS with a $139 million shortfall in fiscal year 24. Please note that the table does not include referendum funds. Once decisions have been made on the uses of these funds, the projection can be revisited. Martha will now speak about impacts to the budget.
Inflation is constantly a reality. We are so thankful that the community approved the reoccurring referendum that will be phased in over 4 years, providing $57 million in the first year so that we can reinstitute service levels for our students. As we talk about budget impacts, our fund balance has been used to help sustain MPS over the years. The impact is a planned $13.2 million fund balance in our general fund. On an almost $1 billion budget, we should have 10 to 20% in fund balance. So I'm talking about our school operations fund. Even if we had the minimum, that would mean $100 million. Currently, we have 13.2. An historical perspective is that in fiscal year 2012, we had $56 million in our fund balance. We also must look forward knowing that in fiscal year 24, funding for integration aid will go away. The net result between the loss of funding and the debt payment for the neighborhood school initiative going away is estimated at $24 million loss of funding. As good stewards of the funding, And knowing that revenues never keep pace with inflation, it's important to continue to look for efficiencies and savings. It will be important to find ways for long-term savings. Some areas where there are potential cost savings opportunities are restructuring health benefit plans and transportation, such as three-tier busing. A long-term strategy to increase revenue will be to increase enrollment. Strategies such as regional development and the facility master plan will help with the best use of buildings and attracting families back to MPS. In addition, there are COVID-19 impacts that are still unknown. There are estimates out there of the impact on the state, which then will impact our state aids, possibly. A concern is that we have been provided a much needed referendum, but how this funding will all play out in the midst of the pandemic is unclear. We prepared the budget based on the law that is in place at this time from the state of Wisconsin and not on future COVID-19 impacts.
And when we look at the Milwaukee Public Schools referendum timeline, on June 27th of 2019, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors adopted a resolution to develop and present a plan to engage stakeholders to gather their feedback regarding strengthening the education experiences for students in Milwaukee Public Schools. In August of 2019, a survey was launched and the fall listening sessions were held to gain feedback from the community on what is needed to make Milwaukee Public Schools the best for all of our students. Based on the survey and listening sessions information, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors then enlisted the assistance of a 32-member task force to include members from various sectors of the Milwaukee community that was charged with independently examining the district's needs and developing possible solutions to achieve and come up with a vision. The task force meetings resulted in recommendations in Milwaukee Public Schools to frame and execute a citywide referendum for the first time in 25 years. In response to the feedback received on December 19th of 2019, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors voted to pursue a $87 million Operation Referendum question on the April 7th, 2020 ballot. On April 7th, 2020, the city of Milwaukee voted overwhelmingly approved by a 78-22 margin an Operation Referendum to exceed the state imposed revenue limit. And looking at that, the operational referendum is for sustaining and expanding educational programming. 7 priorities were identified for Milwaukee Public Schools through the surveys, community listening sessions, and community task force meetings. These 7 priorities have been narrowed to 6 by combining early childhood and class size. As we consider the priorities, we also consider the needs of schools. It will be important to benefit all students while giving priority to those schools and students with the most needs. We need to use an equity lens as we consider possible funding.
Although our district does a good job of providing early learning opportunities to Milwaukee children, our students need more. This includes providing full-day 4-year-old kindergarten, additional pre-4-year-old kindergarten programs, and improving teacher-student ratios. To accomplish this, $5.8 million has been set aside in the referendum. In order to attract and retain more certified educators, $29.9 million has been set aside in the referendum to provide for salary schedules for staff, increased strategies and personnel for recruiting staff, and also add funding to ensure a standard of care at our schools. This would provide for supplemental staff funding for schools in need on an equitable basis. We have heard from the community that providing additional helpful support for students in the way of coping with trauma and other stresses is important. The referendum will support additional staff such as counselors, psychologists, social workers, and restorative practices coaches. In addition, special education supervisors will provide more direct instructional support to help special education teachers that are not fully certified yet. $8 million has been proposed. The referendum will also support LAMP funding, library media, arts, music, and physical education. While funding is in the budget, the referendum will support additional staff in order to increase the amount of FTEs at a school. Planned is funding to start phase 1 of the music policy. Advanced academics. Referendum funding will allow us to expand robust world language programs, advanced placement, and international baccalaureate, along with bilingual immersion and Montessori programs. We must expand access for advanced educational programs for our students. Budgeted is $2.9 million. Career and technical education provides students with work-based experiences and career exploration opportunities to apply classroom skills to the work world. Almost $2 million has been budgeted that will support refitting of classrooms, culturally relevant curriculum, furniture and materials, and career and technical education teachers and computer science teachers.
I would like to acknowledge and thank all of the district staff and stakeholders for their contributions, along with the Milwaukee Board of School Directors for their support throughout this process. This budget is built on equity and outlined to support Milwaukee Public Schools students and staff as we continue to improve academic achievement for all students. Despite the current public health emergency we are living through, I know that the Milwaukee Public Schools is resilient, and we are MPS strong. We recognize the challenges our community faces and acknowledge the individual impact by this crisis in various ways. At this time, I would like to ask Chris Thiel to come in the presentation. Chris. Arthur, why don't you go here, Dan?
We'd like to thank you for your time, giving us the time to present the 2020-2021 Superintendent's Proposed Budget. An electronic version of the budget is available at mpsmke.com/budget. For more information about the 2020-21 Superintendent's Proposed Budget, please contact the MPS Office of Finance at 414-475-8851 or email at budget@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Thank you again.
And we're waiting for Chris. Chris, are you on? So at this time, we are open for any questions that you may have, and when Chris Thiel is on, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you, administration. Will you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We are going to have some chances for questions and for community input and for Chris Thiel and some other things. But I think we'll start with one round of questions by people from members of the school board. And the way I'd like to handle it is having people, I will call their name in order, alphabetical order. First time around, and then the second time around I'll do the reverse alphabetical order, so people at the end of the alphabet not discriminated against. And I'd like you to just have one question and one follow-up question that, if you need it, relating to your first question. And so we'll start there, and then I'll be the last one who comments. So if we might start with Director Baez, do you have a question or comment? Is Director Baez here?
I'm on the phone. Do you hear me?
Yes. Would you like to make a comment or question to the administration about the budget, Director Baez?
Yes. A quick question, and it's just a comment. I want to know to what extent this budget really is sort of like assumes that we will continue to have the same organizational structure, the same delivery and reporting structure after this pandemic, if it's extended and if we return. You don't need to give me all the answers now, but I would just like to keep in mind if that has been a consideration, then maybe we need to talk a little bit more about it later. That will be it. Okay.
Administration, would you like to comment?
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, yes, we will continue the same operating structure we currently have. We have planned to do that. However, there are ongoing discussions about what we need to do for the future. There is looking at various things and determining whether we are structured to, to meet the future when it comes to this pandemic situation. It has given us all an opportunity to pause, to look at distant learning and virtual learning and those kinds of things to see what we need to do and the platforms that we need to have, and then what do we need to do to make sure that we have a robust technology department that can deal with that, as well as curriculum design.
Can I follow up?
Yes. Follow-up question.
Yeah, quick follow-up, and it's more of a comment. I would hope that after this pandemic, we really consider the possibilities of what learning has happened from this process, from this experience, and to what degree it shows that we may need another kind of or a modified structure of operations for the district and delivery for the district. And even though I'm not looking for an answer right now, I would hope that board you to talk to the administration about this and that we pursue that kind of thinking so that we can also have input in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Baez. Director Herndon.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chair Peterson. I have some more questions in terms of one of the items that we're to fund out of the referendum funding, and that is the AMP and the librarians. I looked for detailed in the budget that's been presented, and I could not locate it. I too am not looking for the answer right this moment, but I do want to know what we're doing, how we're dividing the funds, if we're equitable in doing so. That's what I'd like to know.
Administration.
Director Herndon, Chair Peterson, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. While the referendum funding was somewhat detailed in the supplement that was provided after the PowerPoint presentation, it did not go into detail as far as locations of exactly where would these additional people go, or additional supply costs go. What we'd like to do is ensure that it's an equitable distribution based on need, and some of these items would be a phase-in approach, such as a music policy, and so this would just be the first year. And so in that, as far as the music policy, we worked with a group to help identify sites that needed additional staff levels in order to minimize teachers having like 5 sites they need to go to teach music. And that was a collaborative effort, and we want to continue collaborative efforts and input in deciding where the funding would best meet the needs of Milwaukee Public Schools.
And President, Chair Peterson, members of the committee, we are also looking to do the same thing when it comes to art, when it comes to library media specialists, as well as physical education, looking at that phase-in model to see how we could make that happen, and also looking at current school structures of how many need those specialty areas and being able to provide that in phase 1.
Follow up, please.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yes, what I'm speaking of is the actual budget that we have before us, where in past years it was broken out where we knew how many music teachers, for example, were expected to be funded and how much that would cost. The cost of the instruments, how many traveling music teachers, and what that cost would be. I've searched through this budget and I have not found that type of detail. Another thing is the total dollar figure for the AMP program. How much in dollars will we have through that? And how many teaching positions would be for each of those areas? How many teaching positions would be allocated for each of these areas that we're trying to expand? I understand this is year 1. That's all the more reason why we should have that. Thank you.
Administration, do you want to just describe, like under media specialists, in the proposed referendum budget, there's more detail, and I don't know if all board members have seen that.
Okay. Chair Peterson, Director Herndon, members of the committee, there is a more detailed budget. After the whole PowerPoint slide, there's a supplement for the referendum, and on it's page numbered R4, but if you're in the PDF, it's page 60 of the whole PDF. It's past the PowerPoint, and it starts detailing the referendum budget. For example, under early childhood class size, additional teacher FTEs to get to 1 FTE per 22 students in a phase-in model. We'd start with 35 FTEs, and then it tells how much that would cost. And then materials, culturally relevant curriculum and materials, and it gives a cost. So, and it does that for each of the different areas.
Why don't you just do PE and music and art?
And if we go down to physical education, which is on page 61 at the bottom, additional teacher FTEs for physical education. And although it gives like a phasing amount, like what we'd like to get to, this won't get us there, but it'll start us at 12 FTEs with the fiscal impact. Music, 12 FTEs. Art, 17 FTEs, and library media, 15 library media specialists, and that would be for middle and high school, and then 22.5 paraprofessionals, which would help 30 schools at an elementary level or K-8 level.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Miller.
Thank you, Director Peterson. My question is in the area of transportation. Last month, we said we would integrate this discussion around the proposed 3-tier busing. And so I'd like to know where that lies and what's being proposed in this budget. But let me just say one thing is, listening, particularly today, there were a lot of reports about future of schooling in the fall and proposals around staggered days, half days. I mean, it's alarming as what may be happening as we open the school year in the fall. So we may not be talking about a 3-tier busing system. We may be talking about a 6-tier bus. As COVID-19, if it continues over the next year and a half, as number of people are projecting. So that's long term. Issue right now is how is the transportation proposal integrated into this budget?
Administration.
Director Miller, Chair Peterson, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The transportation budget actually is in this proposed budget increased because of inflationary costs. So there's actually a $3 million increase plan from the current year. We did not take any savings as far as a 3-tier model. That hasn't been adjusted in this budget at this time until decisions are finalized.
Thank you.
Follow up, President Miller?
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. I just wanted.
Okay. Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. Should we, now that Mr. Thiel has joined us, would we want to hear from him before we continue questioning, or do you want us to go through the rest of the questions and give Mr. Thiel a chance to update us on what he was going to say later on?
It doesn't matter to me. It's fine if we take a pause, and Chris, you can, Mr. Thiel, you can speak to us, and then we'll come back to Director O'Halloran. That's fine.
Thanks.
Certainly, Chair Peterson, thank you, members of the board. My apologies, there was a glitch on my end. But just wanted to add in terms of some of the context in the budget discussion and information that was already presented. We've had discussions about the need for a federal package, and we've had discussion at the last board meeting of trying to really get a handle on what the fiscal situation looks like at the state level. And just to provide the context to you, and some of this might be a bit of a repeat, so I apologize if that's the case. But we had a fiscal bureau memo, legislative fiscal bureau memo come out yesterday in the state of Wisconsin that in essence did not give us the detail that we need at this point to really have a solid handle on whether or not we will see dramatic changes in the second year of the biennium. I think the only reason we're not seeing a memo that's definitive is because, as they themselves explained, there's been a delay on tax collection and a delay in getting the fiscal detail that they usually have that would allow them to kind of provide a more informed memo. All of that said, the reality is that the easiest word to use, things are not looking good, things are looking bad. And so what we are waiting for and anticipating is the likelihood of some kind of a budget repair bill in the second year of the biennium. At what point, we don't know, but that is likely in our future. The other thing that we're doing at this point, as we try to gather the best information, is look at recent history and look at some analysis nationally. And we shared some information from the Learning Policy Institute that put together projections based on the current economic metrics that they're seeing about 10 to 15 to 20% revenue reductions and what that would mean for K-12 funding. As you know, the largest part, or a very large part, of the state budget is K-12 education. It's a constitutional responsibility of the state. And so in terms of any reductions we would see, K-12 funding sits right there, vulnerable in this moment. What the Learning Policy Institute put forward is an estimate at this point of 11.7% teaching staff reduction in the state of Wisconsin. So in specific terms, that's about the loss of 7,100 teachers in the state of Wisconsin if we do not see a federal package of sufficient size to protect us from that kind of deficit. What the Learning Policy Institute used was a 15% revenue reduction estimate. The good news in the midst of all this is, as we've talked many times about our statewide partners, we have been in contact with Congresswoman Moore's office, Senator Baldwin's office. I think I've mentioned GRUMPS in the past, Grandparents United for Madison Public Schools. They have been in contact with Congressman Pocan's office, which is key because he sits on the Appropriations Committee. And as we were working earlier this week with the Council of the Great City Schools, right now, the tail end of this week through the weekend into next week is the active time for getting a package put together at the federal level, and that work is being done. So again, making sure we have people contacting our federal level representatives is going to be key. We've also had positive conversations with our state level representatives who are putting the call in for the $200 billion package that was articulated by the Council of the Great City Schools. So we're in a moment where we know how the fiscal winds are blowing. To Director Miller's point, the science is telling us that we may have to budget for some extraordinary situations. And what we're doing in the near term, though, what you're charged with doing today and what school boards across the state are charged with doing is putting a budget together in this environment. And the reality is that we as school districts do not have any new guidance about how to budget. And so whether it's the referendum, whether it's all the pieces that the administration has put together, all of the mechanics that drive K-12 funding, the spending, the subsequent state aid, all of those elements as we talk about the complexity of the state funding formula, those are all still in play as they were before this pandemic started. And though we know the fiscal situation has a big question mark over it, the guidance that the board has tonight is that it should budget with the second year of the biennium figures in mind. Obviously, figuring out a way to plan for contingencies will be part of the process that everybody goes through. So that's the context as we sit here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I would like to go back to our questioning now.
Okay.
Dr. O'Halloran.
Thank you, Chair Peterson, and thank you, Chris, for that update. I have a couple of questions about the staffing, the projected staffing on page 1-25 of the budget. So then should we be adding the referendum numbers, position numbers to this page to get to the final? In particular, I was concerned, I saw like an actual reduction of a nurse, and that's always an area of concern to me. But then should I be adding, I think it's 15 nurses that are budgeted in this proposed referendum. Should I add that 15 to get to where we're going to land at under this proposed structure?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, Director O'Halloran, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. That's correct. You would add what is proposed in the referendum budget, FTEs, to this chart that you were referring to in the main budget. So we proposed our usual normal budget without the referendum, and then added the supplemental piece, which is separate. It's separate from the funding totals that are listed in this main budget also.
Okay, thank you.
You have a follow-up?
Yes, please. And then I did have another question on 3B of the budget, 3B7. It's the central services position changes. there were a number of, like for instance, I see the special ed program supervisors. Is that an actual reduction of people, or is that just an unfilled position that is being eliminated?
Administration.
Director O'Halloran, Chair Peterson. The chart showing the special education supervisors, some of this is reflecting restructuring of some of those positions. Okay. And some of it is movement of positions to other funding.
Thank you.
Director Phillips, questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. So I appreciate the questions that we've had so far with some of the considerations around what this looks like, understanding that we have a lot of unknowns. And I appreciate the tenor of this conversation, that we want it to feel as normal as possible, and under the circumstances we know that it isn't. So my questions are around those unknowns, like what additional communication will be provided around the adjustments to funding, whether or not we see a decrease in state aid, adjustments that we need to do for services provided. Director Miller talked about transportation, whether online instruction, training, physical equipment for people that might need things for tactical learning that needs to go into homes that are normally in schools, and then further input on referendum funds should those funds decrease underneath what taxes are actually available. So I think understanding that things are going to change, how are we going to keep the public informed in real time versus retroactively?
Administration.
Director Phillips, Chair Peterson, I think that the pandemic has left us with so many unknowns. It feels like every day we're making new decisions about what's happening in the world today. So we're left with so many unknowns as far as the state budget and what's going to happen. My opinion at this point, and as of today, is that we keep moving forward with the funding that we have planned, and then keep looking at it as needed into the fall adjustments.
Director Peterson and members of the committee, a couple things that we've been doing. We have had ongoing meetings with the Council of Great City Schools weekly to kind of forecast what's happening around the country, to help us fine tune those parameters of what we need to do. We've also been meeting weekly with the state superintendent around this and looking at what we need to do as far as back a phase-in plan and all those kinds of things. I will truly say the world has truly changed, and we have, and public education has truly changed. We have had to reprogram the entire school district in a matter of months, and so therefore, which is something that's going to help us in the future. This is a learning curve and an opportunity for the district to be able to be on two different schedules, and we're going to be planning for those two different schedules as well. But we're going to make our community aware, the board aware, as soon as we get the nuances that come our way. And our goal has been to try to provide some type of weekly update through this pandemic to families as well as staff to keep everyone abreast, and that will not change. We will continue that process as we move forward in the future. So hopefully soon we will be able to have some type of a picture of what this is going to look like. One of the things that is in the back of our mind, we have been working back and forth with the transportation companies, as well as thinking about the three-tier busing. And I think President Miller made a statement about we may need a six-tier busing, because we have to look at this whole thing around staggered type of attendance. If we do staggered attendance, not even thinking about what that's going to mean for bus routes. So in order to be able to stagger and do those kinds of things. So a lot of those things are unknown, but we are pushing at it every single day to try to get the current information as fast as it's produced to us. And we will keep you informed.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Dr. Phillips?
Sure. I guess my follow-up would be for either Chair Peterson or for Superintendent Posley. Would we be open to having more strategic planning and budget meetings after we pass the initial budget in May, dependent on new budget from the state? In terms of when we look at the parameters that we set out, we had no idea that we'd be in the middle of a pandemic. And I think something that's really important in terms of that constant communication is people need to know that whatever investments we're making at Milwaukee Public Schools, it means that my child or my family members that work there are going to be safe, and that they're going to be able to have an environment, whether it's virtual, blended, or in person, that will be conducive to learning. And I think that we're building out toward that, and how people see that as part of our budget process is really a way for people to actually trust us with that, versus to the point of having a competitive market looking at other opportunities.
Well, I can respond. I believe that depending, as things change, we should definitely have additional meetings, and this would be appropriate committee. It includes all the members of the board, and it is a question of strategic planning. I think in our context, I don't think we necessarily have to have any additional meetings in May, because we have meetings every Tuesday and Thursday for the rest of the month. But certainly in June, as we learn new things, either at the federal level, health-wise at the state level, or financially at the state level, we definitely have to get ahead of the game. But at the same time, until some things become clearer, there's only limited things that we can sort of talk about and conjecture about. I mean, I know that there are several things going on, not only with the state, with the Council of Great City Schools, but I know different progressive education justice organizations around the country are talking to each other about, how best to move forward in equitable ways. I'm sure there's teacher unions and stuff are working on those kind of plans, and I think we should immediately collect all that information that a lot of people around the country are doing and share it with the board as a start, but anticipate our need for meetings in this summer, even perhaps in the July month when we don't have meetings. I appreciate you raising that. Administration, do you want to add anything else?
Miller, President Peterson, and members of the committee, the administration, we stand and sit ready to meet at any time to discuss any nuances that have arrived. One of the things that we have been looking at, just like with PPE, trying to make sure that we have enough equipment for staff when they return back to work and those kinds of things, and the short supply and all those. And we have a return to work plan that we have pulled together and been working on. It is constantly changing every single day. And I would say that we're going to have to stay close and current on this as much as possible, because it could shift at any time. So yes, we are open and would love to sit down and work through that. And I'll just add everything I can between 2x2s to keep the board informed of what's happening and what's new.
And I just want to add that based on what President Miller said and Mr. Thiel and what we all know, it's clear that one of our goals, immediately our roles hopefully, will be to encourage our constituency and our colleagues and friends to put as much pressure on the federal government as possible to relieve the state and county and city and school districts in this country. That's certainly an essential task at hand that there's no reason to wait for. Let's communicate with our elected officials. I'm going to move on to Director Simpson. Questions or comments?
Thank you. And I appreciate the conversation that we're having. I know that people are very concerned about just all of these decisions moving forward. But going, ahead with what we have on our plate in front of us, I wanted to talk a little or ask about the referendum dollars. And, we've talked about those resources going into schools on an as-needed basis. So as we start to phase that in, obviously we're not going to have the staff right away to, lower class size for our early childhood program or fill all of those seats for music for the LAMP piece. How are we determining where those dollars are going to start? Where are we going to start seeing those in our schools? Where are we going to start seeing those positions? How are we determining which schools will see that first?
Administration.
Director Simpson, Chair Peterson, members of the committee. What's important is in the budget as far as being able to start hiring so that we could have the most success to get these positions is to have approval through the budget to even hire the positions. So even if we hired them with knowing that these are the positions we want and still work out which schools are they going to, at least the hiring process could start and not be delayed, because part of the referendum, and I know we have a lot of unknowns right now, but we do want to spend this money. We want to spend because, as I said in the presentation, part of our revenue is built on our budget, our spending from the previous year. Our state aid is built on that. So we want to make sure that we maximize that opportunity. Therefore, we're going to be looking at schools and how many FTEs they have, similar to what we did with the music resolution, and see where the needs are the most.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, one of the other things that we have done is to make sure that we are able, we have start forecasting, looking at especially art, music, and physical education and library media specialists, looking at MPSU being able to have a cohort of individuals ready to go. We have worked with local universities to tap into those particular areas, and those are areas where a number of the universities have not turned out in large volumes teachers in those particular areas, but have been working with them and also have had a number of these positions posted out there already, and interviews are currently happening to be able to fill those positions. So we're working with various universities around that particular piece and making sure that we are able to do just that. But also we are looking at our staffing needs reports. We know exactly how many librarians we have and how many of the high schools, starting with high schools first, how many of them have a full-time librarian, and looking at phasing in, taking care of the high schools first. And then we have those 22.5 para positions in there where we could look at all of those elementary schools that may not have anyone, and we know who those elementary schools are, and we're going to work through with that particular piece. You might wind up in a situation, and we're going to ask for that flexibility, because you might wind up in a situation where you have a library media specialist posted, but you can't get a teacher right at that time, but maybe you want to hire para in order to be able to fill that gap until you can get a certified teacher in that position. So we want to be able to have that room to be able to maneuver so that we can make sure that we are able to meet the needs of our schools.
Thank you. Follow-up, Director Simpson?
Yes, please. Thank you. And in terms of making those decisions, at this point in time, how are we reaching out to the school governance council, the parents that are in schools, to get their feedback along with the principal in terms of, planning ahead, looking at things like the career and technical programming or advanced academic classes? How are we getting parental input as well as principals?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, one of the things that we do with the ambitious instruction carousels that we do with around our budget, where we have an opportunity to sit with the building principal, and they have already set with their school engagement council to kind of talk about what the needs are. We know exactly what the needs are through that particular process, and all of those positions has been earmarked and put on their staff needs report. And that means that we start automatically going out there recruiting for those positions. However, some of the positions that you see here are over the additional type of positions, and we want to be able to get started right away at that. But also, like I said earlier, we have with MPSU and also our local universities established a pathway so that we have already started grooming staff and getting them ready, so that with art, music, and physical education around that work. And so therefore we will have individuals that we will be able to pull into the classroom.
Thank you. Director Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Peterson, and thank you, admin, for the budget presentation. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, my microphone muted. My question and basically comments is around mental health. Like, what are we doing even before the pandemic? We know this was definitely a vital situation that our students was asking for more initiatives or support in this area. And even now during the pandemic, what are we doing to ensure that we have that assistance available for not just our students, but staff as well?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, there's a number of things that, like for instance, the trauma-informed care specialist is something that we started on last year, and the mobile team where they're going out in the community and those kinds of things. We've been building all the work around restorative practices that we've been building and trying to pull together various committees and bodies of people to work and engage in what we are able to do to support our children mental health needs. And so therefore looking at how we are able to band and work with the school psychologists that we currently have on staff, the school counselors, as well as social workers, and how we are able to blend all of those groups together to work together. And that was one of the things through the equity office that we have been working on this year, is how do you pull all of those resources together to support the children that we have in this district. And you will see some of those kinds of things that is going to be probably talked about when we talk about the equity guidebook and some of the things of how we plan to cluster all of that support together and to be able to support our young people. What are we doing this summer? One of the things that we have on our online learning opportunities, we have mindfulness, we have social and emotional learning where individual children can go in and be able to do that. We have set up a couple hotlines through the district where you can call in to get support as well. And so we are constantly drilling down. Our psychologists, social workers, counselors, and trauma-informed care specialists, and all those individuals are totally still working their caseload that they had during the previous year before the pandemic. They are reaching out to those individuals on an ongoing basis to talk and provide support around those students. We've also added some additional lens around that because we have brought back our deans of students, our administrators, our child handicap assistants that have worked along with us, just a number paras. So a number of individuals have taken on loads of individuals to talk to students, to have that support that's needed there. And then also we have been reaching out basically we have a list of providers that provide services for us on a daily basis. However, it's only like 4 of those providers that are out there. Jennifer Mims Howell and her team has been working to make sure that we can link up families that may need that support along with to families. Also, we have been doing some of the same kind of stuff with our nursing staff that we have that's a part of the district as well to support us in those endeavors.
Director Taylor, follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that information. If when this is over, or sometime this week, I can just get a summary overview of all of those that you said that are assistant, that would be great to have. And I know we did start with the trauma-informed care specialist. If not tonight, if we can also get a list of how many trauma-informed specialists we have and at what schools or what sites are they at, that would be great as well too.
I'll be more.
Go ahead.
I'll be more than Chair Peterson, members of the committee. I'll be more than happy to do that. And I just omitted the Black and Latino males. They have a support group that they are doing and working with our young people. We also have had City Year to come back online that is doing some work, amazing work around that particular piece, and have that as well as like the Boys and Girls Club. And then we have been working with like the Running Rebels and those various groups as well that also provide some of that support as well.
Thank you. Director Woodward.
Items that had been back since 2017. I think one of it was to start with the minimum hour. We have people at $12 and $13 an hour, and the minimum wage of $15 an hour was approved, and you have began to calculate how that would transpire. However, in the budget, I could not find anything on that item, nor the issue of the playfield at Washington High School. So I just wanted to know if you can tell me where that is, if that's been dropped, go back to the $15 minimum wage, those people are earning less, and Washington High School playfield.
Thank you. Administration.
Director Woodward, Chair Peterson, the Road to 15, we implemented salary schedules for all staff, except for a group of administrators that haven't had a schedule yet. But so all those staff are put on a schedule now, and that schedule replaced the Road to 15.
And
the people under at $12 and $13 hours now, our staff isn't at that level, are they?
Administration.
Director Woodward, Chair Peterson, I do believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So on the salary schedules, each year they would go up a step on the schedule, and we'd have to look at which staff may be under $15 yet on that schedule. So in the fiscal year 21 budget, they would go up another step. And we also budgeted for like a CPI raise, a cost of living raise. So that is 1.8% for next year, just the cost of living piece. But then there'll also be their step on the salary schedule.
I noticed that new hires, they're coming in at $12 and $13 an hour. Then you'll be constantly trying to bring them up. Should the minimum wage be at 15 at this point? For those coming in at that level of $12 and $13 an hour.
Administration.
Chair Peterson and members of the committee, that is correct, Director Woodworth, and actually Leah is going to be walking through the door to answer that portion of the question very briefly. She can give you a detailed scope of where we are in the full implementation of the Road to 15. However, I want to answer the second part of your question, in which you asked in regards of the Washington High School field. And the Washington High School field is, last year we set aside $75,000 for a design phase that to take place this year. And that design phase is currently still in progress. I understand that design phase will be complete at some point in June. And what we wrote in the agreement that the board, as well as myself, signed was that $75,000 for that design phase for that particular year, with an agreement that The partners that we have, which is Common Ground, would pay half of whatever that was. We have yet to get that document in hand because phase one is not complete yet. And so therefore, I will still have to bring back to the board, the second phase when we get ready to into an agreement. That way we would have to create a new agreement that will come back to the board. I also have had an opportunity to talk to our partners who are working with us through that, and I also share it with our partners that by all means we are honoring any word or promise that we have made to anyone. But however, in this particular budget, that money is not set aside because we do not know the value, the amount that needs to be set aside. And so what I ask that with our partners that we work together and come back once we get those results from phase one to come back and the budget adjustments to adjust any of those type of decisions around what it will cost in order to go forward. And I will be bringing that to the board.
Thank you.
Leah?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, Leah Scofter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. Chair Peterson and I think Director Woodward asked the question. Once we entered into meet and confer conversations with the various bargaining units that we have, the agreement was that we were moving forward with the salary step schedules. All of those were created hand in hand with their bargaining unit. And during that process, we then kind of eliminated or moved away from the Road to 15 and that original EA salary step schedule we had that went over the course of 7 years. So through our process of talking to everyone, we decided to go down a different path and implement salary step schedules for the bulk of the district except for ASC. And I believe food service has some food service assistants that do start around $13 an hour. However, that was the salary step schedule that was presented to us by their unit. And they felt that that provided the appropriate starting point with a very nice spread through their step schedule over 10 years.
Thank you.
So you will be continuing bringing people at $12 and $13 an hour. And you'll keep just waiting and it'll be just keep going over to bring them up rather than just starting at $15 an hour. Well, I don't know. I can't understand it, I guess. I don't know. Well,
So
Any
Chair
comment,
Peterson,
administration?
Chair Peterson, Director Woodward, Leah Scofter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. Unlike in the past, though, now when somebody comes in at $13 an hour, they can see every year the step increment that they would earn, showing that every year they will earn a substantial raise through the step schedule. And then we also have made a concerted effort in this budget, and I believe our goal is to continue that process of giving CPI as well. So unlike in years past where maybe there were salary freezes or base wage increase freezes, right now when someone does come in at $13 an hour, they know that within a few years they will be well above that amount of money, and they have a more defined career path than they have in the past.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then I'm going to ask for us to get the community input that we have. I first just wanted to say, in terms of the concerns that our colleagues have raised around mental health issues, just so the listening public knows that during with the referendum plan, in terms of expenditures, we're going to add 62 additional staff, full-time staff, that have to do with those kind of mental health issues: counselors, psychologists, social workers, nurses, and restorative practices coaches. And that's in this, if you look at that, that's a total of 62. And that's I'm pleased, I'm proud that the referendum can help us offer those services. Now, I also simultaneously say, if you know some good counselors, psychologists, social workers, nurses, or restorative practice coaches, we should encourage them to apply at MPS and get involved in the hiring process, because whether we're virtual or whether we're face-to-face, we're going to need those people. My question has to do with two other groups that have been very supportive over the years. And in looking at the budget, I didn't understand the staffing. That was both with the BLMA and the First Nations program. The First Nation program, we had a report a couple times months ago. We talked about our legal obligation to increase instruction around Act 31. And then I looked at the overall budget. It's on page 3C-396 for the First Nations and 3C-409 for the BLMA. And I don't see any FTEs there. I know people work there. And so I'm just curious about the status. Are there any additional people being added to those two important programs, or is there where else in the document, that 906-page document, would I find that information? Administration.
So, go ahead.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, Lynn Rule, Director of Financial Planning and Budget. The first page you gave was 3C-396. That is the grant funding that we receive from the federal government.
Okay.
And that does have one position, but it's a secretary to help take care of
the grant.
Right. And then there's also funding through board funds let's see if Lynn has a memory or not. I believe it's 677? 670? I was so close. And that's on page 3C-57. That's the equity, access, and inclusion. So there's positions there as well.
Okay.
And then there's positions in the bilingual multicultural office. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember where that one is off the top of my head. But I'll get back to you on that. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Off the top of my head.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, just to let you know, there has been no reductions in that office at all. So therefore, the same current staff that was there last year is currently there this year.
Thank you. I do not have a follow-up question. I would like to go now directly to our board clerk and have her report on any public testimony that we've received prior to this meeting.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mr. Matt Chasen from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency has asked to weigh in. Would you like to hear his comments prior to the public testimony?
Sure, we can have him go ahead.
Mr. Chasen?
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. This is a question for Mr. Chris Thiel, if he's still on. If he's not, we can just treat this as a rhetorical question. He and I have had conversations about what he has named, so I give him credit, the fund balance penalty, which simply says that dollars that we set aside to replenish our fund balance or our cash reserves decreases our allowable aid in subsequent periods. I'm wondering if there's any current conversation or the opportunity to start a conversation for a hold harmless provision for us and other districts who find their cash reserves and fund balance depleted during this pandemic, to restore that responsibly in the future and avoid that penalty.
Is Mr. Thiel around?
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, yes, you can. What could you respond, please?
Sure, Director Peterson. Thank you, Mr. Chasen. It's an interesting time, and there have been multiple conversations, and I think as you watch some of the back and forth at the state legislative level, the ability to kind of shepherd through a conversation that would land us in a safe place for the type of mechanism that Mr. Chasen describes. We have been working toward that end. We've had conversations about, for example, some kind of hold harmless language possibly in terms of state aid this year as we head into next year, meaning I think there will be a, hindsight is 2020 Monday morning quarterback moment months from now, where people ask why school districts were spending money in this moment as opposed to saving, what have you. So we have had an attempt to kind of had a hold harmless level so that boards would have some certainty, at least about what their aid is. We were not able to shepherd that through. And the Wisconsin Policy Forum came out this week with a report both about the COVID-19 crisis and about fund balance, which people may have seen. And it commented on the MPS fund balance level, which is low relative to other districts. But right now there has not been a moment where we're able to have that conversation about not having an aid penalty in year 2 if we're building fund balance in year 1. But certainly part of what we're trying to attempt.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chasen, do you have any other comments you want to make?
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I have no other comments. Thank you.
Okay, Board Clerk.
So the public testimony that we've received, we do have 4 pieces of public testimony directly related to the budget. The first piece is from Ms. Dia Haney, and it's regarding funding for facilities and maintenance. The next piece of public testimony is from Christine Carey, and that is regarding pay steps for speech pathologists. The next one would be Brandy Howard, and the conversation is around new boiler attendant trainees and training for school engineers. And the next public testimony is from Jane Audette and is seeking information on the budget in general.
Okay.
So there were no comments around supporting the budget or not supporting the budget, but just asking for more information on the areas as outlined.
Okay, and we can, 2 things. One is the board has been presented is going to be presented their full statements, right?
The board prior to this meeting has been presented the information.
Right. And is that also going to be public on the website? The information, the testimony of these people, the written testimony?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this information is not published. However, if anybody would like the information, it is a public document and can contact the Office of Board Governance to get a copy.
Thank you. And I'll just say that we are working, as was stated earlier, maybe it was stated earlier, we're working to make sure that perhaps that we have broader means by which we can get public commentary at our statutory hearing about 10 days from now. And so please stay tuned, and we'll let the public know how we're going to increase their ability and our ability to have that dialogue with the public. At this point, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to have another round of questions. If you don't have a question, you're welcome to pass. But let us continue, if seeing no objections to that. And we'll start with Director Woodward, since she had to wait to the very end. Director Woodward, do you have? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, is there any information on the budget amendment process?
Yes, well, could you, let's just do this. Could you present, or the administration present, when amendments are due by the board, and then I have a comment about that process. But let's just review so everybody in the public would know when amendments are due. Administration?
Yes, sorry. Chair Peterson, members of the committee, I'm just bringing up a calendar so that I can give them to you. I'm sorry.
No worries.
So the first set of amendments are due on Tuesday, the 12th of May. The administration's response is due Thursday, May 14th. The second round of amendments are due from the committee on Friday, May 22nd, and will be returned with the administrative response on Wednesday, May 27th.
May 20 what, class?
27th, I'm sorry.
Very good. Thank you. Well, I do have a comment about that if it's okay with the committee, just for me to share, and that is the fact that as chair of the Strategic Planning and Budget Committee, I've worked with the board clerk to better understand and hopefully maybe improve the budget amendment process. After review of the process last year, I'm requesting that the members of the board consider allowing the board clerk to arrange a virtual meeting with the superintendent and your ideas for amendment. And if after the meeting you plan to submit an amendment for the committee's consideration, that you allow the board clerk to share your amendment with members of the board. And this would, I believe, set up a process where we would prevent duplicative budget amendments, so people could work together and come up with their own, like instead of having on the same subject two sort of countering, or not necessarily opposite, but different amendments. And it would allow a greater collaboration with the members of the board and the administration. Certainly, we all have the right to present as many amendments as we want, but I think our purpose hopefully will be to work collaboratively together so that the amendment process can be smooth and productive. And of course, this is just a request as me as the chair of the committee, and so it doesn't require any vote or either agreement, but I'm just asking that the committee consider that. And so if I know I'm going to have a couple amendments, I'm going to ask the board clerk to arrange a meeting with the administration, and we can talk through those things. Sometimes, like in my question about not seeing something there, sometimes it's in another part of the budget. We can maybe lessen the number of amendments and also collaborate together so the amendments are more productive as we present them. Just an idea. If people want to comment on that in this round of questions and answers, you're welcome to comment on that. But certainly, you can speak about anything in the amendment in the budget. So, with that, I will start with Director Woodward. Do you have any additional comments or questions?
Yes, I do. I do have a question I would like for Ms. Sculptor. And I noticed in the budget you're talking about hiring employees, but there was a resolution that I put forth, and I want to know where we about the hiring of more African American teachers. There was some talk about teaching, and is that still an ongoing process that's being considered in hiring employees as you have in here?
Thank you. Administration.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, yes, that is going forward. And one of the things that we had done, we had a robust recruitment plan where we had set up a number of tours and recruitment events at a number of the HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions to make sure that we could get more teachers of color. However, due to the pandemic, a number of those trips, all of those trips actually was canceled. But one of the other things that we've been doing is working with MPSU to get more teachers of color through the Emerging Educators program that we have with MPSU, as well as other programs that we have pulled together. And we have a number of different cohorts of individuals that are working right now through MPSU, and a large majority are people of color, very large majority. So therefore, that is going to be our area where we are going to be able to fill those positions. And we are going to continue to reach out to those HBCUs and those Hispanic serving institutions, as well as the number of trips that we were able to take. But also we've been working, and Leah's here now, but we've been working to make sure that we could continue some of those same things through a virtual interview process. And that is something that we have been looking at, is now reaching out to those institutions. But most of those institutions as well are not in physical in session. They are doing virtual learning. So therefore, it's been a little difficult to be able to do just that. But as soon as this pandemic is over, we're going to hit the ground running just to make sure that we are able to meet those needs. That's something that we talked about tonight as a priority for us in order to make sure that we are meeting the needs of your resolution.
Okay, and also we have what?
I did follow up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure,
go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Well, I was talking about a timeline. We have a lot of stuff going on, and I was just wondering, what type of timeline have we set where we can get some of this stuff accomplished? I mean, I think that's something we should be looking at, a timeline of when these things will occur. And I just want to know, have there been timelines to get this stuff, the things that are coming forth are done?
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, yes, we have a timeline. The timeline that we have set, we have not veered off of that timeline. We are constantly working through that particular timeline. We just have to make some alternate plans, such as moving, just like now, we are in a robust piece around the interview process at our schools, here at the district office as well, but it's from a virtual platform. So those same things that we have done throughout the school year, every single year, those things that we are doing right now. So that timeline has not changed. It's the work, the way we deliver has changed.
Okay.
Chair
Chair
Peterson, Director Woodward, Leah Scofter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. Unfortunately, all of the recruitment events that were being held at the HBCUs were at the end of March and all through April, and the institutions all canceled those recruitment events themselves, and they decided to not have virtual recruitment events, but we did send boxes of our recruitment materials that kind of talked about all the different opportunities in the district for not just teaching positions, but all positions, guides on how to apply for our jobs and other benefit materials so that they could have those to hand out to students. A few deans have been in touch that they're hoping to regroup, and it doesn't seem like they're going to have live in-person recruitment events in September, but many of them are looking to go virtual, which we would then participate in as well, hopefully late August and through September. And then in one of the HR updates that I gave, mentioned that for this coming fiscal year, we were hoping to bring on a video recruitment tool. We've kind of accelerated our review of different vendors and starting to get quotes on those so that we will have an actual real platform that is meant to provide for video and virtual interviews, in which we can just send the link to our platform, have all of the questions built into the program, and allow candidates to film themselves at home answering all of our questions. And then that's good for anyone in the district who would want to look at that. So let's say you're a very desirable high school math teacher. You wouldn't actually have to interview at 10 high schools anymore. You could just do your one interview, and then that could be shared with all of the schools. So we're hoping to have some efficiencies, but I think this moment in time has shown us how some of the things that we were looking to implement for the start of FY21, we need to get moving on quickly. And people are also becoming more open and accepting of all virtual recruitment methods. I'm also researching having our own online recruitment platform that's so we can hold our own virtual job fairs. There is a cost, so I'm going to have to research and start looking into quotes on that. but we are looking to make ourselves as online and virtual as possible as we expect this to continue.
And so I think we're doing our own recruiting rather than farming it out to somebody else to do it at this time.
Yes, we always do our own recruiting. This would just be getting internet-based platforms to host ourselves out there in the world to everybody else, but we would still be handling all of our own recruitment in-house, just looking to broaden our reach through technology.
Chair Peterson,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, one of the other things that we have been fortunate enough to have through the MEP, working with that group, they have linked us up with all of those deans of the HBCUs where there's ongoing conversations around that particular piece as well. And one of the things that we are going to have this summer is a job fair, a virtual job fair, because there's a number of individuals now that are either furloughed or laid off or whatever the situation. This is a golden opportunity for us to enhance our staff in the Milwaukee Public Schools, and we are going to be doing that. So a job fair is going to be coming to a location near you.
Thank you very much.
Online.
Director Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Peterson, and thank you, Director Woodward. That was one of my questions, so I'll just go to the next one. With the African American Studies, I know at one point we were going to do it at JMAC. I guess I got a question and a concern. My question is, why was there a pause in recruiting someone for this very important subject in school? And then why are we only utilizing it or trying to put it in one school when we have a district that is primarily African American students?
Administration, ethnic studies.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, one of the things that we did last year, we set aside, I think, 5 African American studies teachers and seven last year. 7 last year. I was corrected. 7 last year, and just to let you know, we have 7 set aside in the budget this year as well. But the one thing that we have been running into is recruitment and trying to find staff to be able to fill those positions. And we have done everything. We have looked at distant learning type of activities that we could do, find one person that could go into various schools and, and do it from a distant learning standpoint. We are constantly looking to see how we can fill those positions. And so therefore, the 7 that we put out there last year, we have yet to fill those 7 positions. And then we're adding 7 more. So we're working with staff. That is something that we have been talking to leaders about. If there's somebody in your school that will take on additional class, how could we do that? We have talked about an opportunity for various individuals from the community to be able to come in to teach various sections of that, to job share. So we've been looking at a number of unique ways. I think Director Peterson and Director Miller been involved working with us along the year, trying to make sure that we could fill the positions that we currently have out there. We are doing everything that we possibly can, looking for new ways of being able to meet this need. And one of the things that we know from the start this year that we're going to look at is more of a distant learning kind of piece to see if we get one, if we get one teacher, maybe we can serve 3 or 4 different schools, looking at it from that venue as well.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, just to follow up, thank you for that. And what I'm hearing is that we do have the jobs on the website, or we do have the jobs open. And if we're adding 7 more, that will be, we need 14. Or I just want to make sure I'm hearing, or I have clarification of the positions.
7 both years. It's
7.
just 7 all total.
Director Taylor, Chair Peterson, it's 7 positions.
Total.
Not 14.
All right, 7 positions. Okay, so maybe we need to be shooting it out and making sure that people know, but thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Now, Director Simpson.
Thank you. So I've looked out a few times, so I apologize if this has been raised already and I just missed it. I've gotten some concerns about how as a district we're trying to look at things through an equity lens all of the time. It's something that comes up in our conversation. So could you just point out maybe some specific ways that you used the lens of equity in building this budget, or specific areas that you feel really show that we took time and care to look at this budget and fund specific areas through an equity lens?
Administration.
Director Simpson, Chair Peterson. One of the ways that we look through an equity lens is we talked about those school budget conversations. We work with the school to hear about their academic programming and to hear about their needs. And then we have the regional resolution teams that really dissect each of the school budgets so that we can see where the needs are. When we did the budget conversations, we worked with the schools that have the highest needs, and part of equity is making sure that all students have access to the best robust instruction that they can have. And some of these schools, it may be just where they don't have enough certified teachers. So having those conversations, we're able to look at that, plan what extra support those schools might need, and even provide some extra stand-up support in the way of teachers, or even some schools, they put more long-term subs in to help them out to reduce class size.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, some of the other things that are there is the 53206 initiative. Everything that we did there was from an equity standpoint. We provided 2 additional substitute teachers in those schools. We provided additional paraprofessional support in those schools, as well as a trauma-informed care specialist that was provided, as well as providing 40 hours to the parent coordinator there because of the need. So that is something that's happening. We did the same thing in re-envisioning the North Division piece. So there was a number of different things that we did around that particular piece, looking at through the lens of equity around the Douglas building that we talked about, making sure we bring that up to be a state of the arts. Some of the things that we did in that area was to make K-5 schools, K-8 schools, middle schools, and a high school feeder pattern, looking at what that looks like and making sure that we are on target there. We are able to stand up teachers all over the district when there are situations where you may have, 15 children to one teacher, or 10 children in a case, other than closing that class out. We had stand up where we stood up schools in order to be able to support our families. The whole bilingual resolution, the work that we have done around that, in order to make sure that we meet those needs within in our bilingual schools around that, and that whole piece around the seal of biliteracy, looking at that as well. And then you talk about the art, music, and physical education. We have looked at how many art, music, and physical education teachers that we have in the district. And when we look at it, it's been our LAMP FTEs has been based on enrollment. So therefore, if you happen to be in a school where you have a large enrollment, you get more. So therefore, what about the school that may be at 200 students? We are able to stand up teachers in those schools to be able to support that. And then with also a wholesome look at the running rebels and VFZs and city years and all of the other groups that we bring on to support academic excellence, to make sure that we meet those needs where other school communities may not need those avenues. And also, we just talked about the African American Studies teachers. So we're placing them in various places where they are needed. And then looking at, when you look at AP and IB, of how we go about making those things happen and supporting young people that may need extra. One of the things we're doing right now is the AP exam. And so therefore, with that AP exam, what do we need to do to make sure we have the best testing environment for all of our children. So does that mean we open up a few schools to have 2 or 3 children to come in to give them that best testing environment? That's what we're looking at, and that's what we're planning to do. How do we do that? Also, they can't take the test on a Chromebook, now providing the device that we need. All of these things are rolled into this budget.
Thank you. Director Simpson, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay, Director Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I had some questions around the changes in FTE. So I saw that there was the increase for school-based staff, which is commendable. But a question that I had was, what was the vacancy rate this current school year in terms of school-based staff?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, go ahead, Martha. Yeah. We are working with that. We will have that answer for you very shortly. So
sure. And
someone should be walking through the door with it momentarily.
Okay, and then my next question around FTEs was something that Dr. O'Halloran touched on in terms of the decrease in our regular budget around therapists, nurses, social workers, psychologists. And I understand that we're thinking about referendum dollars for that. A group that I didn't hear about were building service helpers. So I'd be interested to know what we're doing to make sure that our buildings are safe places if we're decreasing the amount of building service helpers that are available to service the buildings.
Administration.
Director Phillips, Chair Peterson, as you know, the budget decisions were very difficult to make, but as far as building service helpers, we looked very carefully at the facilities and maintenance budget and the staffing that we reduced. We did that through vacancies. So we removed FTEs that were left vacant so that it shouldn't have an impact on the schools.
Okay. And did we get any other vacancy information yet, or should we go on and then just come back to that?
Drilling down for that information. That information will be here momentarily. I promise Director Phillips we will get you that information.
Okay.
Thank you. And then I guess I just wanted to ask that question because I know that we're talking a lot about uncertainty. So in terms of what Martha was talking about in terms of the funding service, it's hard, I think, to wrap our heads around increasing positions if we weren't able to fill positions. So with that, allocating money toward either a funding service or into some of those positions like therapists, nurses, and putting out money to fill those roles. Because if people have a feeling that there's a vacancy and that there's consistent vacancies and we don't know what that money is being used for, I'd rather just in the budget process allocate those toward things that we need during this time.
Thank you.
Director Phillips, Chair Peterson, we also budget a vacancy adjustment, which is a negative on our books, basically. And it's a large negative. It's almost $20 million. And that it's basically you have all these expenses and then you subtract the 20 million. It's allowed you 20 million more to spend in other places. So we've kind of allocated that already through our vacancy adjustment. And that's why we were able to budget some of the things that we were able to at this time. So we kind of pre-plan a vacancy based on historical amounts. Now, with the referendum additional FTEs, we feel confident that that vacancy amount will be okay for next year. I guess.
But Chair Peterson, members of the committee, one of the things that we always are able to do is to look at how we can reuse those funds at the school level, and we allow the school to decide what that will look like. You know, if there is a vacancy that they cannot fill, and so we do everything that we possibly can and keep that vacancy open. However, they can contract outside to be able to meet that need until we are able to do it, and whether they do it through an LTE or whatever the situation may be, in order to get us to where we need to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would recommend if we could, if we go on to the next question, we will be getting these results for you. There's someone running that as we speak. Okay, let's go to Director O'Halloran.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. So my first question, I guess, is more procedural. So when we have the two separate documents, one that's the proposed referendum spending and then this budget, are we going to be voting on them? Are they both going to be considered separately and approved at the end of this month? Am I understanding that correctly?
Administration.
Director O'Halloran, Chair Peterson, my plan, and Dr. Mann could weigh in, is that near the end of the process, we bring a resolution to the board on the budget amounts for the different funds, and we would include the referendum in that document, which then the board would vote on.
Director O'Halloran?
Oh.
Yes, yeah. Director O'Halloran, it is my understanding from the administration that you're being presented with two separate plans at this point based on the uncertainty around the distribution of the referendum dollars. But once that information is clarified with the board, you would be asked to vote on the plan that is being brought forward to you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask one other, well, not really ask, I guess, just raise one other concern. I have a number of line item questions that I can submit through email so that I don't tie this up. My concern was to Director Phillips's point. We have testimony for tonight's meeting from engineers, and I've heard from engineers on the ground that they have needs that aren't being met. So I was wondering, I guess maybe this is a question, are there any plans to, for the construction funds that I saw we're putting in $4 million more in the construction fund, will the engineers see any new equipment out of that or any new training, or would that be part of the operational funds?
Administration.
Director O'Halloran, Chair Peterson, the $4 million for the construction fund was to help with our deferred maintenance. But we do have our Department of Organizational Development, which our facilities and maintenance can work with in order to provide more professional development as needed for their staff.
Chair Peterson and members of the committee, one of the things that Martha is talking about is our LMS, learning management system that we have, where a number of courses are offered on various topics, whatever that topic may be. Travis Leslie is here, and they do ongoing professional development. Some of the things that we are looking at is this whole thing around PPE, making sure that all of our staff have that and what they need, when it comes to masks, gloves, and all of those type of things, and hand sanitizer, soap, and those kinds of things, making sure that that is there. That is going to be sprinkled throughout the budget, because we are entailing going to be a large cost for that. They have already, the facilities and maintenance team has already placed a major order. I've also asked each department to make orders in that behalf, as well as Jennifer Mims Howe's office, because those are the areas of which we've been ordering that material. But there is ongoing professional development for our engineering staff, building service helpers, as well as boiler attendants. Travis?
Director Peterson, members of the committee, Travis Lesney, Director of Facilities and Maintenance. As Dr. Posley had mentioned, we do a lot of training for the boiler attendants, building engineers. We have a career pathways document, so we're very focused on making sure that the people get the training that opens up more opportunities to move up within the system and get promotions.
Any follow-up question on that, Director O'Halloran? Thank you. Thank you, Travis. Next person is President Miller.
You're on mute, President Miller.
Oh,
Did you see yourself?
can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It didn't show that I was muted, so, but sorry about that. So this would involve Travis also, I believe. He was just talking about advancing and training of folks. We've in the past, as a board, talked about phasing out private subcontracting. We've talked about it in terms of building service and food service, these other things. How does this budget interact with us hiring our own employees and then, of course, training and advancing our own employees?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, President Miller, and members of the committee. One of the things that we have done this past year, we had a number of different job fairs, and we had a number of different job fairs, and each one of them we focused on building service helpers to make sure that we had the staff in place that we needed. And our goal is to hire as many as that we possibly can to make sure that we don't have gaps. And so therefore that we have been in each job fair, Travis comes away with a long list of individuals that can go and take the test. One of the job fairs, we were able to provide the test on site. There's been some work on the test to make sure that it was, that it was prepared for today's job, so that more people will be engaged, as well as the pass rate has gone up on that behalf as well. So Travis has a list that is given to him that he can take individuals off, and then he have a training piece that he provides ongoing training for the facility staff. I am thoroughly impressed when it comes to this whole thing around. I'm thoroughly impressed on this whole thing when it comes around the support around orientation that he provides for F&M. So Travis, if you could lend some other thoughts about that.
Sure. Director Peterson, members of the committee, Travis Lesney, Director of Facilities and Maintenance. In conjunction with the recruitment efforts that we team up with the Human Resources Department to really put forth a great effort to do that. We have cut our vacancy rate within the last year in half by all of the efforts that have been put forth. We continually meet basically on a monthly basis. We provide reports to senior management about our vacancy rates. And so we really have a lot of effort put forth in that arena. And we're actively recruiting at all times. And as I mentioned before, the talent management group is really focused on providing us with that list of additional employees to bring on board. And once they're on board, we have a thorough training program to get them into the buildings. That again, lots of opportunity to move up within MPS as they get additional training.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Dr. Posey. Chair Peterson, if I could ask one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
In your presentation, Dr. Posey, you talked about standing up after third Friday count, standing up, making adjustments. Every year that I've been on the board, that has been a critical issue with the changes in enrollments at individual schools and just the whole variety of the transitions that take place. How does it look in terms of having a fund? I know this is a really tight budget, even without considering COVID-19. Do we have funds to be able to accomplish this, the standing up, the adjustments, these things that are critical?
Superintendent.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, one of the things that at our regular budget, it is not there because we put everything out into schools. Our goal, ever since I've been here, is to make sure that we do not cut at the school level. So we push as many individuals and our dollars out to the school. And in years past, we have set aside a few dollars in the budget to be able to do just that. And so what is earmarked here that you will find that is over in the supplemental budget is about $2 million that's set aside for that purpose.
And just to be clear, when you say supplemental, you mean from the referendum funds?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is Director Herndon.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I want to revisit, I heard something about right now we're going to keep the referendum budget funding separate from the regular one. So then I have to go back to my topic of getting our LAMP programs, and let me explain it a little further. In the terms of the music, we made all the allocations already. We're in the hiring process, and it's my understanding that we've hired music teachers. I would expect what I asked for earlier to be able to be found in the regular budget, which means how many teachers total, because we've already selected the schools for music expansion this fall. How many teachers are we going to be paying out of the current budget, and what is the total amount? So we need those FTEs. I'm sure they're already allocated, and I've not found them. And then in terms of art, we're working on that to institute that this fall. And would I be correct in assuming that that would come out of the referendum funds once we get that passed through? Then we need to know how many FTEs do we need to hire for the art program as well. So there's a lot of details that I find that appear to be missing, or I've not located them.
Administration.
Director Herndon, Chair Peterson, in the attachment for tonight's meeting, under the superintendent's overview, there's the PowerPoint. It's a PDF document, and there's a PowerPoint, and at the end of the PowerPoint is a supplement. It's a supplement book to the budget that includes description about the referendum funding, and then also a more detailed budget that you're talking about. And it is our hope that through the May discussions, we will have that more detailed, finely detailed, that we know what is going to be agreed upon. And but the FTEs are all there so that you can see how many are being proposed, and that may change during the May conversation. We'll have to see. But the resolutions that you're talking about, the policies, that is included in the referendum, and the FTEs for the music and the art are in there.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to add that one of the reasons I like the fact that it's separate is there was a lot during the campaign around the referendum. People said, well, how do we know the money's going to go which way? And this lists it all. I mean, it's up to the 57 million. And I believe that one of the reasons the referendum won is because people want the music, the art, librarians, et cetera, and that's shown here. And if it has to be tweaked some, then we should tweak it. But I'm pleased that it's transparent. Let's see, Dr. Baez. Director Baez, are you still with us?
Do you hear me now?
I can hear
Hello?
you now.
Do you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
good.
we can hear you.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you. I have two questions, sort of like ideas here that I got to talk about. One is that last year in the budget, we made provisions through a budgetary amendment for a bilingual initiative to grow bilingual education teachers and to provide and to segregate like $200,000 for tuition assistance and get these folks on a path towards becoming bilingual teachers because we need them badly, okay? And then we created a bilingual task force to actually give very specifics to that because there was a concern that this was sort of the help that people were getting was fragmented and the money had not been appropriately and adequately used, etc. So there were some issues there, and that's why we created the bilingual task force. I have not seen those $200,000 in this budget. I saw, and I commend the administration for that, I saw an increase of about $112,000 in the bilingual office, but I have not seen something specific to that. What came out of the meetings that we had from the bilingual task force is that there was too much fragmentation out there and we had to do something about it. And I think that even though the pandemic sort of like caused us to stop the meetings of the task force, the message was there that we had to do something about this fragmentation, that we had to probably consider a one-stop kind of a place to address the issue and get people in track to become bilingual teachers. And I know that there's a lot of issues related to all of that, but I would like the administration to please, I mean, you can point to me if the money has been included somewhere, because the bilingual amendment last year was that this be continued. If it's not there, how is it that this budget, okay, is in fact going to increase the possibilities of growing more bilingual teachers at a time where we need them badly? And to what extent is MPSU, for example, connected to all of this so that we do not have the kind of fragmentation that we had before? So that's one question, and if you want to answer that, fine, and then I can go to the other one. So any response to that?
Thank you. Administration.
Director Baez, Chair Peterson, I want to answer your question, but I also want to go back to a question I believe Chair Peterson had about the bilingual multicultural office and where is it in the budget. And 3C114 has the bilingual department.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then 3C63 also has a supplemental bilingual budget that answers more Director Baez's question, where is that in the budget? Dr. Posley will talk more about that. I do want to mention also, besides what Dr. Posley will talk about, that in the referendum, our section concerning advanced academics has additional teacher FTEs for bilingual. It could be used, we kept it broader so it could be for bilingual, immersion, world language, English as a second language, or sign language teachers, and there's 11 FTEs put there in the referendum. And Dr. Posley.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, there's also the recruitment money that is there, and the combined total with the recruitment money and other monies that are housed there is $443,000, a little over $443,575 that are there. Also, the seal of biliteracy is in the operation funds, which is another, I want to say, $70,000 to $80,000. And as well as the supplemental budget has a number of things under advanced academics that we just got through talking about. So that money is still earmarked throughout the budget.
Can I, Director?
Yes, please.
Peterson? Okay,
yes.
A clarification question. No, I was, I'm appreciative of the fact that bilingual initiatives in general have grown. I was specifically talking about the tuition assistance money, and I understand that some of that is in the MPSU budget. Can I get some clarification on that?
Administration.
Director Baez, Chair Peterson, the money, the 200,000 that was set aside for the para pathway is in the MPSU budget, but it was also noted with a bilingual location code so that it could be identified that this is specifically for that pathway for bilingual teachers.
Okay, so sorry, I didn't quite get it. So I will read this more carefully, okay? So I can go to the next question now.
Okay,
question
go ahead.
number 2, Mr. Peterson. Okay, my Director Woodward raised an issue that has concerned me quite a bit. And her concern about the road to 15 and people making $15 an hour is, I think, well thought out and well intended. When we argue the road to 15, the intent of the arguments that we made for pushing for a road to 15 because we care about these first level employees making poverty wages. There is no way that anybody that works with children should be making less than $15 an hour, okay? So if bargaining units agree to a salary schedule that may place people in a salary schedule that may take 3 or 4 years for them to reach the $15 mark, that's unconscionable. I have a huge problem with that, and I think that we are going to have to revisit the intent of that because we pass motions, we pass resolutions, we argue for the road to 15 because we believe that that should be done immediately. This pandemic has shown us that these folks are incredibly valuable, and to treat them that way is wrong. It doesn't matter about processes and agreements with bargaining units. I happen to believe that we should be doing better for them and that this pandemic should get us to that point, and I think that we're going to have to revisit it in this budget process, or I intend to put in resolutions and motions to that effect.
Administration, do you want to respond?
Chair Peterson, Director Baez, Leah Scafter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. At the time that we brought forward the Phase 1 salary subschedules, which would have included some of the groups that were on the road to 15, it was identified at that time that through our process of meeting with everyone who represents those various employee groups, that they actually did not feel that the road to 15 actually was in the best interest of their membership. At the time, the salary schedule, had we moved everyone immediately to 15, would have just created every single person in that bargaining unit earning $15 an hour with no structure then set out for any real advancement. At the time, the salary ranges ended at about $15.75. They felt that we did increase the starting salary by about $1 an hour, and that we now created a path that went up exponentially more than that range had ever gone before, and that people would be able to have greater opportunity over multiple years instead of just realizing that one raise in year one with very minimal raises throughout the remainder of their career. And we did identify in that report that we were alerting everyone that we were walking away from the road to 15 in the EA 7-year step schedule. Obviously, everything can be revisited, but at this time, we haven't had any requests from the units that we work with, but we can obviously look at those at any point in time.
Thank you.
Yeah, clarification. I agree. I hear you. I may be wrong on something here, but the intent of the board when we discussed the road to 15 was to get people to $15 an hour as soon as possible. And if any negotiations or discussions have happened where this intent of the board has been ignored for other reasons, I think that we need to rethink about this, and I would hope that we get together some minds about this. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Baez.
Chair Peterson, Director Baez.
Yes, yes.
Just to make sure I didn't misspeak somehow, we did bring all of that forward to the board, and the board did vote on it. We didn't just unilaterally implement any of those schedules for anyone. So obviously, if we do revisit anything, we would be bringing it back to the board once again to approve or not approve.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, just a time check on people. We have gone around twice with people asking a couple questions each. We can continue to do this, go another round if you'd like, or we can call it quits for the day. I think I wanted to second Director O'Halloran's comment that I know a number of us have some very specific questions about different line items or where is this or where is that. And I think we could bring it up now and go through that, or certainly talking to the board governance and the administration, some of those specific questions can be answered that way as well. So what's the pleasure of this committee at this point?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
It looks like we have Mr. Chasen in the queue and then Superintendent Posley.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll go. Okay, then we'll do it through queue if you want to speak, as opposed to going through another round, and then we'll see how we go. Matt Chasen, please speak.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I just want to point out the amount that has been budgeted in the proposed budget for our OPEB trust fund, which is our retiree health benefit trust fund, is about $10 million less this year than was budgeted in the current year. To be very clear, the amount that is budgeted is sufficiently high enough for us to qualify for additional categorical state aid. And so the amount that is budgeted is absolutely in line with the board's objective of maximizing revenue. It is, however, less than the amount that we have communicated to our actuaries as our pre-funding objective. Dropping the financial speak, that simply means that we have told our actuaries that we plan to fund the retiree health benefit at a certain rate. They take that amount and then calculate what the unfunded retiree health benefit amount is, and we are obligated to report that as a liability on our balance sheet. That amount presently is about $735 million. So deviating from that funding clip can have an unfavorable impact on our balance sheet and our liabilities. This is an open conversation that we are having with the administration right now, and if there's a subsequent update that's warranted, we will certainly bring that to you, and I can answer any questions you might have.
One question, you said that last year we allocated $10 million. What is in the current budget?
I believe that what is currently allocated is $42.5 million. I'd let the administration correct me if I'm wrong.
What was last year's?
Last year's budget amount would be $52.5 million.
Oh, okay. Administration, do you want to make any comment? And then we'll catch.
Chair Peterson, I agree with what Matt has to say. We have discussed this, and we're going to have further conversations to ensure that we all agree with the process and what's been budgeted. We were able to meet that threshold with what was budgeted this year.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
other? Yes.
you have a queue of Dr. Posley, Director Taylor, Director Miller, and then Director Woodward.
And then I see Director Herndon.
And I'm
after
sorry,
that.
and then Director Phillips, and then Herndon.
Okay. I think the next person you said was Superintendent.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, we have a estimate, close to an estimate, some information to provide Director Phillips and Leah. You could do that.
Yes, Chair Peterson, Director Phillips, Leah Scofter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. Unfortunately, the pulling of actual vacancy reports takes a little bit of time, but we will start pulling those to get an actual vacancy rate. But just some data to help out. At the end of last school year, we had about 420 teachers resign or retire from the district. Throughout the school year, depending on what day in HR, we have had between 50 and 70 vacancies that we've been asked to actively fill. And unfortunately, we have kind of seen that consistent variation between 50 and 70 vacancies throughout the school year for our teaching staff, predominantly in high school math, science, special ed, and some various world languages and bilingual. It's been a part of our active recruitment to touch on those areas, but that's about the number that we've carried through this year. We definitely do have positions, though, that are being filled by supplemental teachers and long-term subs that the schools have agreed that they want that person to continue in that position, so then they no longer consider that a vacancy, and we're not actively filling for the year based on the school's request. If they do want that position filled that has a long-term sub in it, we will continue to actively recruit for that. Last year, we had to pull together some information about a district-wide retention rate, and the district as a whole had a 79.1% retention rate for all district staff. And then I do believe we've had the conversation before that unfortunately, as this school year has gone on, we've had more and more cohorts of paraprofessionals entering our various pathway programs. So we have seen a little bit of an uptick at certain moments in time as those cohorts start of paraprofessional vacancies. We have been able to start filling those as they appear, but unfortunately, they usually don't become a vacancy until the person signed up for the class and the next week they're in class. So there's usually not a whole lot of leadway on that, but those are probably the two areas that we have seen fluctuating vacancies when it comes to school-based staff.
Thank you very much. Director,
Can I say?
Yeah, go ahead. Administration.
I'm sorry, this is kind of a little different topic, but Director Baez had asked about the page number for the Para Pathways funding, and it's page 3C102. 3C102, and when you read the description, or it's called the nature of expenditure, you'll see contract services / bilingual multicultural, and that money is for the Para Pathways to help pay for some of the coursework for those participants.
Thank you. Board Clerk, who's next in the queue?
You would have Director Taylor, Miller, Woodward, Phillips, and then Herndon.
Taylor, please. Director Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I know we're talking about how we don't know for sure how the school year is going to be when it starts up next year. A lot of the concerns I was hearing was from parents of special ed students. And if we are thinking about a hybrid where it's online and in-person learning, where in the budget or just where are we going to ensure that these students get the education or the learning that they need, seeing as if it's kind of difficult with this group of students, or it can be challenging?
Administration.
Director Taylor, Chair Peterson, we have funding in our board funds for special education services, plus we have grant funds through IDA that help support And as you know, we spend more on special education services than we are reimbursed by either at the state level or the federal level. So what we need to do is rethink how we spend those funds so that we can support the students if they're at home, or if we have some other type of bifurcated system of supporting students in general.
Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that, and it may not be able to be answered tonight, but I just want to make sure that we are putting some type of plan in place just to make sure that they are definitely getting the services that they need. We know it varies with our special needs students, and so what may be right for one may not necessarily be an educational platform for the other one.
Thank you. I think it's Director Miller is next.
Yes, I guess I have a procedural suggestion, and that's that if there are line item issues that people want to raise, they should submit those to the administration, and those questions and then the responses be made public to the board and to the public as a whole. And that way, because what I've heard tonight has raised a lot of questions for me. Just the issue that Director Taylor just raised concerning special ed, I would like to ask some more questions, but I don't want to take up, I don't want to go too late tonight. So I would suggest that as much as we can do that, we've done it in the past, that we submit those questions and ask that they be the responses be made public as soon as possible.
Thank you, Director Miller. Who's next in the queue? I want to make sure I get it right. Is it Dr. Phillips or Woodward?
Next, you have Director Woodward,
okay,
and then Director Phillips.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Woodward.
Yes, I'm speaking to Mr. Chaison's information on the pension plan, and I just want to know if there's going to be an impact for retirees who are already retired when it comes to the pension plan, and that things are going to be done to make sure that these people are not impacted when they left expecting a certain amount of money and that nothing happens to the pension plan. Dr. Chason.
Mr. Chason.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Matt Chason, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. To answer your question, Director Woodward, specifically, when we talk about how we fund this retiree health benefit, there is a promise that has been made to employees, and that has a cost. And we have set a plan to fully fund all of that cost in about 15 years. And if we stay that course, the benefit of a fully funded trust for those benefits is that we no longer have to contribute to that. To put that in perspective, the amount that we are projected to contribute annually until we are fully funded is about $60 million. What that means is that in 15 years, if we stay the course, we will eliminate permanently an expense equal to the entire transportation budget. And that is why you hear what might sometimes be received as unhealthy preoccupation with this topic from this office, because of the substantial financial agility it will bring to the district once it is fully funded. But if we stay the course, there would be no risk to any retiree who is guaranteed this benefit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. So I just had a question around, I know that, and this could go to the chair or Dr. Posley or Dr. Mann, wherever this goes, that we are trying to increase the way that public testimony is provided in these meetings. So I'd like more clarification around that. And I think because part of the democratic process has been for people to be able to hear what people are interested in, and then also see the board interact with that information, work with that information. And I know that there's been a growing concern about how that sort of interaction would happen throughout this budget process.
Yes, yeah, I know we've been working on that. We being some board members, the Office of Board Governance Administration, Who would like to answer that at this point? Administration or Office of Board Governance?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
members of the board. At this point, Director Phillips, members of the committee, I am in constant communication with the Office of Technology. We actually met today, and the board will be switching its platform in which it holds the virtual meetings to a Zoom platform, which allows a lot of different things to occur during the meeting, such as it would not be a necessity to flip-flop between board members who are speaking and those who are not. Everyone's picture would be visible. Relative to public participation, we had tossed around the idea of allowing members of the public to be able to call the office and record a voicemail that could be played during the meeting, but we have exceeded the expectation of just having voice and are working with the Zoom platform to allow members of the public to be able to register and become an attendee of the meetings. So you will be able to have members of the public actually have their 2 minutes to speak to the board members regarding budget issues. There is a feature called the waiting room in which individuals can sign up, join the meeting, and they are in the queue to speak just as board members are now. So you will get a chance to do that. We are working through some logistical and some security features before that can occur, but we are 99% sure that we will have everything in place, including contracts and everything that we need to provide a secure platform for people to engage by the statutory budget hearing. And that is on the 19th.
That is our next budget hearing.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to the Office of Board Governance, Technology, the administration chair. I know President Miller was also one that was working on this too, and just for providing clarity for the group.
Thank you for asking the question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'd also like to take this opportunity as people are listening to inform the public that there will be more information coming forward about how the information to get into the queue will be shared. So there will be a number that will be made public, and we will publish that. We will actually send that information out to our subscribers to the board meeting notice, as well as try to get it to our families so that people will know exactly where to log in to listen or the number to call.
Thank you. I believe Director Herndon is next. Can't hear you.
Director Herndon, your mic is muted. Is it your headset? We can't hear you. And now I can't see her. Technology is working with her line. Okay, Director Herndon will need to dial back into the platform. So, oh, there she is.
Can't hear you.
So technology has suggested that you hang up and then dial back in and go back into the platform. Okay? Okay, thank you. Chair Peterson, if you want to go to the next speaker and then go to Director Herndon.
Who is the next speaker, Board Clerk?
Director O'Halloran would be next.
Okay, Director O'Halloran.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions I've gotten from a constituent was about the status of the retirement task force. And I was wondering if there's any consideration for that work and how in this current budget, how that's interacting. Can you give us an update on where that's at, please?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, members of the committee, I'm going to have Leah Sculpture. I know that they will be meeting next week, but she will give you the exact time and date.
Yes. Chair Peterson, I don't remember what's the question.
Director O'Halloran.
Director O'Halloran, sorry. Leah Sculpture, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. The task force is convening remotely on Monday at 2 o'clock. We are working with technology because it's an official task force of the board. We are open to the public, so we're still working out a few details, but we will be reconvening as a group on Monday at 2 o'clock, and we are working in preparation of having a board item to the AF&P committee this month in May. And the goal of that is for the committee, I believe President Miller asked us to have one recommendation that the group agreed on that we bring forward to the board, but we're going to be working through that all on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, Director Herndon, back to you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, great.
Okay, great. I have a question for HR as well. I got a question from a constituent questioning the hiring of our music educators and the fact that the interview committee lacks musicians. And that sounds really strange to me that we would have non-musicians interviewing for a music instruction position. And the other thing is, did we hire a curriculum specialist for music as yet?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, Director Herndon, Leah Sculpture, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. I believe I was also included on the emails from the music committee, and the position that they were talking about that did not have music teachers on the interview panel was the committee or the interview panel that was set up for the curriculum specialist position. According to board policy, I believe it's 6.23, section 5, for ASC positions, administrative positions, the list of the required positions in the district to sit on the interview committee do not include teachers. So they were following the list of the required interview panel for an administrative level position in the district, and the curriculum.
We are going to be revisiting, and I will be talking through this particular piece, and we will have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Follow up. Yes, I agree that we should be looking at that because we've got the expectations already laid for us to have the music portion instituted. The schools have already been selected who were not getting appropriate services for the fall, and we can't do anything that's gonna put that in jeopardy. We simply must make sure that it's handled appropriately. And it just doesn't make sense to me that a non-musician would be evaluating someone that is required to have instrumental music skills. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Chair Peterson, Director Herndon. So these are still the first round interviews. So oftentimes for administrative positions for first round interviews, those people aren't necessarily in the profession. There will be someone from the fine arts department that is on that panel, but usually once then you get to the second round interview, that's where the head of the department will then pick one or two, however many people they want to sit on the second round with them, and that's usually where you see the more specialized people in that profession is at the second round interview. So like when I hire positions in HR, the first round interview panel only has one person from HR on the interview committee, and the rest are made up of people from other areas of the district. So it is a somewhat common practice at the first round interview, but like Dr. Posley said, we can revisit any needs of any specific interview team but just so you know, it is common to see that at the first round level.
But thank you, Director Herndon, for bringing that up, and thank you, administration, for taking that into consideration. It sounds like it's going to be acted upon. Who's next in the queue, Board Clerk?
Mr. Chair, Director Simpson is in the queue, and then you have Director Woodward.
Okay, Director Simpson.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I will respect the request of Chair Peterson. My question was a line item, so I can email that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it was actually President Miller who suggested that, but I'll take credit. Thanks. No. Director Woodward.
Yes, with the hiring of the music teachers, will we be keeping in mind of the diversity of the school, in that there will be people culturally from different backgrounds that will be teaching music to our children?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, Director Woodward, Leah Scofter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. We do have recruitment right now that just wrapped up. We just had 2 interview cycles for our certificated staff that just finished up this past week. We did have a lot of outside candidates that were interested through the entire process, and we have seen more interest in our music positions now that we have them paired up into much more manageable assignments, so that you're not going to 5 schools as your full FTE. And we did advertise them all as either the 1 full-time position or the 2 part-time positions combined to go to 2 schools. So that has definitely helped. Right now, at this moment, we are in our internal transfer cycle, where our current staff has the ability to select from all of the open positions in the district. And then in a few weeks, we'll be posting all of those jobs again. We are trying to make sure that every recruitment we do includes the push to find a diverse group of teachers. I will say that in music and art, the licensed teacher pool is extremely small in the nation and in the state. So while we're doing the best we can to make sure that we're attractive to candidates from all possible diverse backgrounds, in this area, we have probably one of our smallest pools of candidates. So we're trying our best. We are hoping that we can have our own internal licensure program for our art, music, phy-ed, and library positions, because that is where we seem to be able to really increase the diversity of our staff. One of the other things that we're working on, and that also took a little bit of a back seat now with the school closures, but we did have one of our assistants who was working on trying to get us more involved inside the schools, because really what we need to see is the people entering the profession being more diverse. That's usually one of our hurdles, is when we go to colleges and universities or even hold our own recruitment fairs, those people coming to apply for certificated positions are not as diverse, but they are the people who chose to go into those college programs. So we do have an assistant who's been working on trying to come up with ways to get people entering college interested in these fields from diverse backgrounds.
Okay, and when the amendments went forth for the in the last budget for music teachers, one of the things was that it would be at a lower level, elementary level, so that the students would be able to advance high school and into middle school in the program, because they have to go through this evaluation. And if they haven't had it in the elementary schools, will they be getting it in the elementary levels at that level?
Administration.
Chair Peterson, Director Woodward, Leah Scofter, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. Budget might be able to help me out a little bit here, but just from what I can tell from all of our postings and my talking with the specialist who handles the recruitment and the postings for our music positions. We have increased those 0.2 positions to 0.5 positions so that the elementary schools are receiving more music time in those elementary schools. So some schools were able to increase all the way to 1 full-time music teacher just for their schools, but a lot of other schools have now increased that 0.2 to a 0.5 to give them extra days of music. So we are hoping to see over the course of this progress in increasing our music FTE that the children do have exponentially more exposure to music as they go through their entire career at MPS.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who is next in the queue?
Mr. Chair, that was the last speaker that we had in the queue.
Well, I'd like to just say a couple things, and that is to thank everybody for their insightful questions. I've learned a lot about the budget today. I also think that we as a district should be proud of the fact that in these difficult times, one, we won the referendum, and secondly, is to take, for example, the music and art and some of our other programs. We're on the growth side of things. I think one of the ways that we can do a better job recruiting actually is to brag about, okay, we have a music plan now. We have a policy. We're going to return Milwaukee what once was, which was a real leader in music education. And similarly, we can do the same with art, and we can start bragging about some of these things. I know it sounds, we're not quite there even to be able to brag, but I think that's a real opportunity. I also know that there's a lot of artists out there who right now are really struggling. And hopefully, I include my daughter, who was graduate from the Milwaukee High School of the Arts, who's in New York trying to survive as an artist. They're part of the gig economy. And I think if we have an aggressive recruitment approach, we might be able to find some great artists and musicians who would become teachers. And we can do that through a lens of diversity. And so maybe we can take a really difficult situation and help both the artists and our students if we can recruit them and get them into either a university program at a regular university or MSU, our university program. So hopefully through these difficult times we can continue on a path that I think we're on, which is to really build MPS once again to what it can be. I don't mean to say that as a closing note. If there's anybody else who wants to make a comment before we adjourn, please do so. Does anybody care to speak?
Well, I would just like to say one thing. Thank you to MATC and Mr. Walker and his staff that handed out from the MATC dental program. Today, they handed out toothpaste and bags to our students at North Division. A shout out and a thank you for all they do and working with our scholars to help them even when they're out of school.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Dr.
Chair Peterson.
Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
I just want to thank you, Chair Peterson. I just wanted to thank the educators. I know last week we had Education Week, and this week I believe it's nurses. So all the nurses and educators who are employees of MPS or just throughout the state of Wisconsin, I would like to say thank you for your service. We are definitely in unchallenged times. And I just think we should always promote those that work within the district and let them know how we appreciate all that they do and that we stand behind them and support them in their work as well.
Thank you.
And for our students too. We can't forget about the babies.
Board Clerk, do we have any other items? Oh, I see Director Herndon, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say, Mr. Chair, thank you for bringing up the fact that we need to start tooting our own horn. The music expansion and the art expansion was my dream from the day I got on this board. That was my focus, and it is going to remain my focus. And to answer Director Woodward's question, what we passed in policy, the music will be and the art will be available from K3 all the way through. That is the objective. It'll be phased in, but we need those new hires for this fall. Hopefully, COVID will let us open up so that we can do in-person training. But thanks everybody for helping us push this initiative forward. That's it.
Thank you. Board Clerk, is there another item on the agenda?
It looks like we do have President Miller that would like to speak.
Oh, he's okay.
And Dr. Posley.
Okay, go for it. President Miller.
I just want to thank the administration for the work that goes. I know the work that goes into this budget is monumental, and so I really appreciate all the work that they've done. I appreciate the work that technology has done to put us on a different platform, and the work that the Office of Board Governance to help get us here also. So I just want to thank everybody involved. There've been a lot of bumps in the road, but I think this is working, and it's going to even get better with the way that we're trying to get public input available for the 19th. So kudos to everybody. This has been an example of us rising to the task.
Agreed. Thank you. Superintendent Posley.
Peterson, members of the committee, in keeping with Teacher Appreciation Week, and you talked about tooting your own horn and a right to brag. Chance the Rapper came to town today to honor one of our teachers, Margaret Rusher, who is a teacher over at Parkview, and gave a nice gift to her as well as to the school. So I just want to just give it up for all of our teachers out there. And Ms. Rauscher, job well done. You make us truly MPS proud.
Thank you. Thank her. Thank all of them. Board Clerk, is there anybody else in the queue?
Mr. Chair, there is no one else in the queue.
Is there any other item on the agenda?
That was our last item on tonight's agenda.
Therefore, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.